And I see those words I love to see. Showtime. Welcome to yet another ZeroBounce webinar. This one is a little different. We are kicking off a series. I am so pleased and proud to welcome you here. My name is Paul Leslie. I am the Senior Content Manager here at ZeroBounce and our webinar host. And we are going to learn a lot. I can feel it. We're going to be covering spam complaints, what they really mean, and how to avoid them. And believe me, you do want to avoid spam complaints. As I said, this is going to be a series. I hope this will be like must-see TV for you, and we see you month after month. But here's episode 1. I would like to hear from you all. Where are you from? Please feel free to leave any comments in the chat there. We're going to get things going here. And first of all, I'd like to tell you a little bit about ZeroBounce. Some of you know a lot about ZeroBounce because you're a client. We have more than 500,000 of them. Many of them are some of you. ZeroBounce is all about getting your emails in the inbox, in front of the customer, which is where anything can happen. Hello, Grant from Minneapolis, Josh from Chicago, Samantha from Indianapolis. We have the Midwest well represented today. John from Cambridge, Massachusetts. Cambridge is such a cool place. Thank you all for joining. I should add, Luke, our speaker, he chimes in. He's from northern New Jersey, the Garden State. Anne Marie from San Antonio, Texas. Tazwar from New Jersey. Some international people. Liz Roman. Thank you, Liz, from Vancouver. Lauren from Chicago. All right. We've got a great group here today. I see ZeroBounce as the company, as I said, that gets your emails in the inbox. I know they do that because I read all the reviews, and it's very impressive to see. We're very, very glad that we bring those emails in front of the customers for you. Victor from Brazil, Adele from Cleveland. A little bit on the housekeeping here. Yes, indeed, this webinar is being recorded. It's going to be archived on YouTube where people can watch it whenever they want to. Feel free to ask any questions. We are going to do our best to get to all of those questions. It's been shown that when people know what they're about to learn, they tend to retain more of it. This has been proven with students who are told about what the lecture is going to include. So we're going to cover understanding spam complaints, mailbox provider impact, root causes of complaints, strategies to reduce complaints, and then again, we're going to get to those questions and answers. Going to bring on our speaker, Luke Glassner. He is a great teacher. He is the director of email deliverability here at ZeroBounce. And what you should know about Luke is that he has been in your seat. He's not one of these teachers that just knows it in theory. He has looked at email, worked with email, analyzed it in great detail. He knows what he's talking about. He's also a very accessible guy. He's always happy to talk with people about email. Be sure and connect with him on LinkedIn. And let's bring Luke onto the stage. Hello, Luke. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you, Paul?
I'm doing great. Very, very excited to learn about this topic, spam complaints.
Yep, they're very important for your email deliverability.
All right. Well, Luke, I'm going to leave you to it, and I will see everybody at the Q&A.
Thanks. And thanks to all of you for joining me on our first webinar in the series Inbox Answers. So today we're going to be talking about spam complaints. We're going to learn all about what a complaint is, and that's where we're going to start. And then we're going to move on to what are the differences of other things named spam, like the junk folder or spam folder, and what a spam trap is and things like that. And then we're going to get into how do you avoid complaints. So let's start out. What counts as a spam complaint? So unsubscribing is not the same thing as being marked as spam or junk. In fact, unsubscribes are healthy and normal. So I wouldn't worry so much about unsubscribes from a deliverability perspective. If a lot of people are doing it, then maybe you want to check whether you're good at setting expectations or delivering the right content. But those are not negative signals. However, a spam complaint is one of the most negative signals that you that a mailbox provider like a Google, Yahoo, whoever you're using for your inbox can receive. Spam complaints and spam traps are not the same. A spam complaint is when someone marks this message and reports it as spam. A spam trap is an address. Often they're what we call recycle traps, where what happens is the person, the provider had a address that they took out of service, and then they look to see, do people actually stop mailing them? Are they doing list hygiene? If they don't, then they start hitting what we call spam traps, and that will often land you on a blacklist. Whereas a spam complaint is the person marking you, and that's usually one of the quickest ways to end up in the junk folder. One interesting point is that Google, for example, only counts spam complaints for DMARC compliant mail. So what does this mean? This means that your mail is authenticated and someone marks it as spam, they count it. If the mail is totally unauthenticated and someone marks as spam, Google is giving you the benefit of the doubt that maybe that was a spoof or a phishing email that's pretending to be you, and so therefore doesn't count it against your reputation. Next. There we go. So everyday triggers of spam complaints. Probably one of the most common is overfrequent mailing. You're just sending too many emails, people get fed up with it, and they start to mark things as spam. If you're sending totally irrelevant emails or unwanted emails, that's another reason. Misleading subject lines. If people feel tricked into stuff with the subject line, or that there's a big disconnect between what the subject line tells me the email is about and then what it's actually about, they're a lot more likely to mark you as spam. One thing I'll comment on this is if you follow the email news, you might have seen that case in Washington State was decided yesterday, and the court did come down on the side of misleading subject lines do violate their state law and held against the senders. So another big reason to avoid misleading subject lines, especially on factual pieces of information, like if you say the sale is going to only be 48 hours, it really needs to only be 48 hours. People mark things as spam when they don't know the sender, right? These are unknown senders. In fact, knowing or recognizing the from name in the inbox is one of the biggest reasons why people open emails. Probably even more important than perhaps the subject line. If I have no idea who you are, I'm a lot more likely to mark you as spam and ignore your messages. If I do know who you are, I'm much more likely to open and read your messages. Another time when people use spam complaints is if there's tricky or hidden unsubscribe options. If it's difficult for me to unsubscribe, I'll just mark you as spam, and now I stop receiving your emails the same as if I unsubscribed. And we'll get into some tactics around that a little later in our slides. So what is the human side of spam complaints? A lot of people do mark things as spam because it makes them feel a certain way. They're upset. They're not happy. So some examples of why people would feel like that is if there's a confusing sign-up experience, if they feel tricked into the emails, they have concerns about privacy or their ability to trust you, and I think this one's important, the expectations are not being met, right? If I sign up for something and you tell me you're going to mail me once a week and then you mail me every day, a lot more likely to be marking your emails as spam than if you said, hey, when you signed up, hey, we're going to mail you every day. Well, then I expect to receive mail every day. Next. So I mentioned this before, and we'll get a little more into it. What is the difference between a spam complaint and a delivery to the spam folder or the junk folder? So excessive spam complaints will lead to delivery to the spam folder, or sometimes called the junk folder, depending on what email client you're using. High spam complaints are a major red flag to the ISPs, and one of the strongest negative signals that ISPs take a look at. If a lot of people start marking you as spam, you will probably land in the junk folder, but if those complaints get even worse, then they might outright block your mail. Spam complaints are an active signal, so the person is actively doing something, Another reason why you might land in the spam folder is a big lack of engagement. That's a more passive signal, whereas spam complaint, someone's actively marking you. In the other situation, it's they're ignoring everything you send. Many ISPs, Google in particular, talk about that they do individual level deliverability. So that means that I might get the email in my inbox because I interact with you as a sender a lot. Whereas if Paul, for example, never interacts with your emails, it's a lot more likely to go to junk for them. Both of these situations require attention. And I'll just throw out that ZeroBounce can help you with both, especially me. But they do require different strategies. You want to reduce complaints to keep from going in the junk folder. If you're in there already, well, one, you're going to have to reduce complaints to get out of it, but then there's more things that you have to do. So hopefully you're all clear on the difference between the two. And at the end, if you're not, feel free to ask some more questions about it. So what happens when this happens and when people start marking you, and how do the mailbox providers react? So all of the major providers, Gmail, Outlook, Yahoo, in fact, Google, Gmail and Yahoo released their big new bulk sender update last year. They all mention thresholds around 0.3% at max, with a recommended target of 0.1%. That works out to 1 per 1,000. And honestly, that recommended target has been the rule of thumb for deliverability professionals like myself and for all senders for most of my career. So it's been well over a decade that people have been saying you really want to stay at less than 1 per 1,000. If your list is very big, that doesn't mean that you should be able to, like if I'm mailing 250,000 at a time, that doesn't mean 250 spam complaints are going to be okay. Excessive spam complaints will still be one of the quickest ways to land in the junk folder. Some ESPs say they talk about into account math-based spikes. So this is like, I mailed an email yesterday to a big list. Today I only have a few, maybe abandoned cart or welcome, lot less volume, and somebody marks me today. Sometimes you will see a spike in what the rate is in certain dashboards. The ISPs claim that they understand that, if somebody marked yesterday's campaign and you only sent 20 emails today, now one was marked, that's like a 5% spam complaint rate. So they do take that into account. The other thing I would really hone in on is that providers view spam complaint rates based on their received mail. So what they think of as your spam complaint rate is usually not what the ESP reports as the campaign level rate, right? In an ESP report on your campaign, it's calculating that across all ISPs or all the people you sent to, basically. Whereas the ISPs, if someone's marking me as spam at Google, Yahoo doesn't know nor care about that. So it is very specific to the ISP. So when you're examining these rates, if at all possible, break them out by the different ISPs so that you can see, seems like all my complaints come from Outlook, for example. That's where my problem is. I need to check that out. It's not really the rest of my list. Or maybe they're peppered throughout the different ISPs that you're mailing, in which case that's probably indicating that it might be a more general problem. Maybe you're not doing a good job of setting expectations or getting permission. Though not getting permission is another good way to get spam complaints. So how do you know that you got a spam complaint? Well, the number one way to know is you sign up for what's called an FBL or a feedback loop. So feedback loops or FBLs are basically alerts that are sent to you or a specific address like a postmaster at or abuse at when someone marks you. And they can send you this thing called the abuse reporting format, which is like a little report. It's kind of similar to like a DMARC report in that it's another report that's sent to you. And then if you read those, you can identify, hopefully, from that, who marked you and suppress them across all systems. Typically, your ESP will receive these and mark and note or calculate spam complaints within your campaign reports. And if at all possible, they'll alert you to which person it is so that you stop mailing them, right? But one thing I would put out there is that, especially if you're using multiple systems or you have some kind of CRM where maybe you're tracking engagement and things like that with emails and salespeople, et cetera, that you suppress those addresses that are identified as spam complaints across all systems, not just the place where it was reported in the campaign, but everywhere, because the recipients won't realize that, oh, this was a different system. And what they'll do is they'll probably mark you again. So to avoid getting marked over and over again, make sure you suppress them everywhere and clean them off your list, your one-on-one communications, etc. So checking spam complaint rates. So one easy way to do this for those concerned about Gmail who doesn't share who marked you as spam, you can view the complaints in their Postmasters tools. Anybody can sign up for it, and it's domain based, so you don't need a dedicated IP or anything. You just go there, sign up. They give you a little thing that you put in DNS to verify that you own the domain, and then you'll start receiving stuff in Postmasters. So this image here is the spam complaint rate for them, and Postmasters specifically is Gmail. One thing I've said to people is, hey, if you're getting complaints in one ISP, then you're probably getting them in the other. So make sure you look at them all. And again, just to reinforce it, always calculate your spam complaint rate by the ISP as opposed to the campaign level. So you want to drill down. You can do this by looking at if it breaks it out for you, or maybe sorting by domain and seeing which spam complaints for what domain, example, Gmail. Those are the way you should calculate it. And then in our next slide, we're going to talk a little bit more. There's a second view in Postmasters called the identifiers flag. Okay, so in this, you can see that there's a column that has the IDs, and then another column, with the rate. So the IDs that they give you here are your campaign or template ID that you can find in your email headers. This way, you can use this ID to go look up in your ESP. I know it's alphabet soup, right? To go look up in your ESP what campaign was the one that they actually marked as spam, so that you can relate it back. Because Google doesn't tell you who marked as spam, so it's not that easy to determine who it was, but you can at least know this campaign got a lot of complaints while the next one didn't. What was it about this that made people unhappy? Maybe the targeting was off. Maybe you dusted off an old list and somebody made a lot of complaints. Those kind of things are typically some of the causes, plus the other ones we mentioned earlier. So how do you sign up for the FBLs to receive notices of these complaints? Usually you do it in a Postmasters tools, or for Microsoft, they have the junk mail reporting program that's part of SNDS, which is Smart Network Data Service, I believe is what that stands for. Don't quote me on that one. And then, of course, Yahoo's Sender Hub that came out about 2 years ago, they also have the feed for that. Many ISPs, like cable companies and things, also have FBLs that you can sign up for. And if you go to MOG, you can look up there. I have a link to it. There's a list of many of the FBLs that you can sign up for. I'm sure your ESP is signed up for these, but if you're handling anything in-house, you also would be a good idea to sign up and pay attention to them. And one last thing I'll throw out there is that people think of Yahoo Sender Hub as really just Yahoo, but Yahoo actually handles mail for a lot of companies. It's not just them. It's also AOL, Verizon, AT&T, a slew of different providers that all really use Yahoo on the back end. So it is important to watch them. Next. So how do you keep subscribers happy and stay out of the spam folder? Well, I would start with having a clear sign-up process. Be transparent about what the people are signing up for. If you're going to send twice a week, say that. If you're going to send every day, say that. Right? And that goes along with what we'll get to at the end here about the control frequency. Consent management. The stronger the consent, the less likely you're going to have complaints. I would advise everyone to get opt-in permission for every email address they mail to. One of the quickest ways to generate a lot of spam complaints is to send out emails to people that have not opted in. Another thing you can do is make it easy to opt out. If I can't figure out, or it's a pain for me to unsubscribe, then I'm just going to mark you as complaint, because that will end your emails to me. So as a recipient, I get what I wanted, which is the emails to stop, but you get negative signals against your domain and sender reputation, which is not good. Another thing to do is to, use and perform list hygiene. We can help with this, but even on your own, it is better to send to a smaller, cleaner list that's quality than to send to everyone under the sun, but 2/3 of them don't care at all about your mail. If someone hasn't engaged with you in a long time, and you keep mailing them, it becomes more likely that when they do, they're going to mark you as a spam complaint, to get you to stop mailing them. However, having a huge amount of unengaged people in your list is also another way to land in the spam folder. So performing list hygiene isn't just good for this, it's good for all aspects of deliverability. And then the last one is to control the frequency. Understand, if I increase frequency, which so many people are doing right now for the holiday season, if I go too much, people are going to start marking me as spam. One way to avoid this is to use a preference center where they can what we call opt out. Instead of opting out or marking you as spam, they can say, hey, I don't really want 2 emails from you every day. How about you send me a roll-up of your best stuff for the week once a week, right? This allows them to continue to be engaged, and you don't lose them as a subscriber in any way. However, you don't annoy them with just deluging them with emails. And this is something that, it's a little late to be doing it for holiday season, but it's not a bad idea. And maybe put that on the radar for when this holiday season ends, and you can have that in place for next year and test it out and build it out during the upcoming year. What are some strategies to avoid spam complaints? Well, one of the big ones that we've touched on several times was setting the expectations from the outset. Another one is including clear opt-outs, especially in a welcome email. If the person's address got put in there by mistake for whatever reason, or they didn't really sign up, that first welcome email should have an opt-out link that's clear and easy to find. I myself often in the very first welcome email put some kind of thing in towards the top of the email that says, hey, if you didn't really sign up for emails, you can opt out here, or you can opt out anytime you're sick of getting them. Relevant, valuable content will be a lot less likely to be marked as spam. People want to get relevant emails. In fact, study after study shows that that's, what people are really looking for in their email, in an email program. Timing. If you are mailing internationally or across the United States, we have 4 time zones. I think there's actually a 5th one if you count Hawaii as its own zone. So you want to be thinking about hey, if I'm mailing this at 8:00 in the morning in Eastern time, then I'm actually emailing somebody in the West Coast at 5 a.m. who probably doesn't want their phone to go off. So make sure that you're not emailing people at odd hours. They're a lot more likely to be marked as complaints. Frequency is another big complaint driver. So understand and control frequency. List header unsubscribe. So this is something that's actually in Google, Yahoo, and several others bulk sender guidelines, is to have this as one of the things in their compliance dashboard, right? So a list header unsubscribe is the thing that if you're, for example, in a Gmail inbox, it might say, if you want to, unsubscribe here at the top next to the message. And while some people worry about that will drive unsubscribes, my view is that makes it easy, and I'm a lot more likely to click that and not mark you as spam than if you don't have it at all. And another final strategy is to reduce the frequency to unengaged. If people aren't engaging with your emails at a high frequency, when you're mailing at a high frequency, try sending them a little lower frequency. Maybe they simply don't have the time to read 2 emails a day, 7 days a week from you. But again, that comes back to understanding and controlling frequency, but also having that opt-down. Here's 3 ways that we at ZeroBounce can help you prevent complaints. One of them is when you validate your emails, your email list, we do have a code that says abuse that is specifically what we call known in the industry, known complainers. Known complainers are people that like to opt out using the spam complaint button, and they tend to mark everything as spam. They're quite excessive about its use. The ISPs know who those people are, and they take their complaints with a grain of salt. But we tell you who they are so that you can make a decision. Do I really want to be mailing these people, especially if they haven't engaged with me a while? Maybe it's time to sunset them out of my program. Another way is our real-time email validation. It stops those abused people at the door from coming in. It also stops other toxic addresses from coming in and invalids. So real-time email validation, especially inform type validation, has long been one of the things I have recommended people to do to keep their list clean. You don't want a lot of bot signups on your list that make everything a mess. List cleaning keeps the inactive and toxic contents out of your campaigns, right? At the beginning, we mentioned about spam traps. It's very difficult, if not near impossible, to figure out if an address is a spam trap. It will deliver. With Apple MPP privacy stuff, opens coming, it might look like it's opening email. It might look like there might be bot clicks in it that look like the person's really engaging when they're not, when in fact they're a spam trap. It used to be that, spam traps never had any kind of engagement, and that was one way you could start to narrow down who they were. But honestly, it's a lot easier to just validate your emails. We'll identify who are the spam traps. You can get them out. You'll avoid the spam folder, and you'll avoid blacklists. And I would recommend people think about not only cleaning their email list when the thing first comes in, but also, every 4 or maybe 6 months, once a couple times a year, to avoid spam traps, which, as we mentioned, are different than spam complaints. You can do all this with our ZeroBounce One platform for deliverability, automation, and tools. It has email validation. You get 25,000 credits for it. We have tools to help you restore your sender reputation if it got damaged from something like too many spam complaints, called email warm-up. We do DMARC monitoring, and I'd like to point out to people that our DMARC monitoring is, one, a domain is included, but if you need additional domains, we charge a flat rate for that. We don't charge by CPM, which many DMARC processors do. So if you're a higher volume mailer, that can be a significant savings for you. We do blacklist monitoring. In fact, in the ZeroBounce One package, you can monitor by domain, you can monitor by IP, and it checks it every 3 times a day, every 8 hours. So in real time if you ended up on a blacklist, so you can check it out and figure out how to get off of it. And I believe that will be one of the topics that we will talk about later in this series. And then finally, there's the inbox testing. This is a great tool to see whether am I really reaching the inbox. We've recently really upped the seed count, so we've really increased the accuracy of this tool. It is something I use with virtually everyone that I work with for our deliverability consulting services. And now we're going to be on to the Q&A.
All right. Excellent presentation, Luke Glassner. And anybody who has any questions, feel free. Ask those questions in the chat there. Our first question here comes from Dana Wilson. Question, since you're on Postmaster, why are the spam complaints between my ESP and Postmaster so different? Should I ignore my ESP stats? What says you?
Okay, so it's mostly about how they are calculated and attributed. I definitely wouldn't ignore your ESP stats. However, if we're specifically talking about Gmail, what Gmail itself says in Postmaster's tools is probably the most accurate source. But remember, they align things by day, whereas the ESP aligns by campaign, typically in reporting. So like if I go check my campaign stats and it shows me I got 7 complaints on this particular campaign, that might be, I do a weekly report to management about how our campaigns for the week did, right? I might have a different number there than if I look in Postmasters because it's counting everything by day. The other thing is Postmasters counts by all the mail they received, they don't break it out by campaign. So one complaint might be on, I don't know, someone was dopey and they marked an abandoned cart or some kind of transactional message. Does that ever happen? Yeah, people sometimes do that. Whereas in the ESP, they're only looking at what's sent from there, and they're usually doing it by the campaign as opposed to like the period. So the difference tends to be how they attribute it and different types of mail across your ecosystem in Postmaster tools versus specific campaigns.
Luke, there's something that happened to me yesterday that I was hoping if we had time, I would get to ask you about, because, I'm aware that there are some people who are really, really quick to hit that spam button. Yesterday, I ordered something and I got a total of 4 transactional emails from this company. They sent me the receipt. They sent me a shipping thing. Then they even sent me, there was one other, it was like an update. And then there was a thank you. It was an automated thank you. Now, what says you about this as a practice? And, I was thinking like, golly, these people must be getting a lot of spam complaints. What do you say?
I wouldn't be surprised if they are getting some spam complaints. 4 transactional messages on one transaction seems a lot. I personally would space those out a little more so that they're not all coming at the same time, especially that thank you one.
Yeah.
After the thing delivers to the person is when you say thank you, right?
Yeah.
Thanks for your order. Or you say it in the very first one when you send the
Right.
confirmation.
Yeah. It seems like that would be a good thing to think about. Think about those kinds of things like spacing. Russell Rojas, is it good practice not to send to catch-all email addresses? Good question.
So yes, so catch-all email addresses tend to be one of 2 things. They're either what a lot of people, like you see this in MailChimp, they call them role addresses. These are like info at, sales at, admin at. They tend to be mailboxes that go to multiple people. And I have encountered this numerous times in my own career where they have the group mailbox in there. 3 of the people really want it. They keep re-signing up. Somebody else doesn't. They keep opting out. Then they start marking things as spam. You can't tell. So one of the things that we do at ZeroBounce is we score catch-all addresses from 0 or 1 to 10. 10s and 9s are usually pretty safe to mail. Below 5 is usually pretty toxic, and I wouldn't touch that with a 10-foot pole. So you can mail them, assuming you've scored them and that they're very likely to be a real and positive subscriber.
If anybody else has any questions, feel free to leave them there in the chat. Luke, what would you say to somebody that, maybe they don't even know that it's attached to ego, that the size of their list, it kills them that they've been trying to hit a certain number, whether it's 10,000, 50,000, whatever, and then somebody comes along and they say, listen, you're not serving yourself. What would you say to that person about cutting the list, purging the emails?
I would say that with my own clients in the past, we purged the inactive people. And as a result, we got much better inbox placement and deliverability. I worked with a client and they were having a big sale coming up. We did this. I said, give me a shot. Let me clean out the inactives. Let's reduce the mailing size and we'll get in the inbox and you're going to make more money. Well, they said, okay, we'll let's try it. You seem very confident. You're willing to bet this month's fee on it. So sure. So I did it. In the by 1 o'clock, we had so many orders that their order system crashed, and we had to call up the web host company and immediately scale because there was just too many orders coming in at once. Because when you really reach the inbox is when you really drive value. So it isn't really about the size of the list. I mean, obviously, you do need a certain volume to achieve a certain level of revenue, but it's much more about the quality of your list. And a lot of deliverability and thinking about it is that balancing act between, do I have a big enough audience to actually achieve the revenue that I need while not mailing everyone under the sun, which is going to lead to complaints, unactives. Now I'm going to the junk folder. Nobody's reading my mail and nobody's buying, right? So there's a real life example from my own past life where sending a smaller list resulted in a record-breaking day for sales for that company.
That is a great reframe. We have this follow-up question from Adele Lucas, following up with Dana's question. The math-based spike means Gmail does take that into account. The total number you sent on one day might be smaller. Will they not punish you for that much as much as possibly a larger send day?
Okay, so yes, I do follow your question. So what happens, like I said, it's like what I call trailing complaints, right? I mailed out today and you marked me tomorrow or the next day. It looks like a big high spike. I do believe they take that into account. They are not like, they're more sophisticated than that. That said, constantly having those spikes is not going to be good, right? Repeatedly crossing that recommended threshold is going to hurt you. In fact, there is a form out there on the internet that you can like request mitigation from Google. If you read their bulk sender rules and the stuff in that form, they tell you straight up, if you have gone above the threshold within the past, I think it's 7, but it might be 30 days. That I'd have to double check, so don't quote me on that. But that they will automatically refuse your request for help. So you do want to keep the complaints there, because anytime you're being flagged or marked or whatever unfairly, one of the first things they're going to say is, well, people mark you as spam all the time, so obviously, they don't want your mail, and so we're going to put you in the junk folder. If you're ever on a blacklist and you have to go make a request, triggering a lot of their traps, but if it's one of the more internal ones that you might see, what can happen there is it will be impossible for you to get off the list, right? Because one of the first things they're going to look at is, are people marking you as spam? You're saying that you cleaned everything up, but yet you're still getting all these complaints. So obviously you haven't, right? So keeping that threshold low is the key to getting help from any of the ISPs. And that's one of the reasons why it's important. Even those math-based spikes, if they happen a lot, repeatedly, can hurt you.
It's a great high-level question from Adele. Thank you, Adele. And from Mahi Tasanumu, after validation, the ones marked as valid in ZeroBounce status, could they still be hard bounce?
Overall, the answer to that question, I believe, is no. If I'm not mistaken, it says on our website that we have a 99% accuracy rate. And in fact, it might even say 99.6% accuracy rate on really identifying invalid emails versus valid emails. So, I mean, could it? Anything is impossible in theory, but there's only a 0.4% chance of that happening versus the 99.6% chance of it being correctly validated and marked.
Thank you, everyone, for these questions. Very good questions we got here today. And if anybody is wanting to get started with ZeroBounce here, you've got a QR code there. You can book a consultation with Luke. I'm sure that you've noticed that Luke is very, very open to dialogue. He explains things in a way that I've just nobody else. I understand exactly what he means. Very, very concise too. So scan that QR code and you can have your one-on-one with Luke Glassner.
Yep. We also have the link in the chat. And I would, if you're having problems with delivering to the inbox, if you're seeing things, you're running some of our tests from our ZeroBounce 1 package or the previously called tools, and you have questions, hit that up. I'm happy to answer them. I'm happy to work with you and fix your problems. This is what I do. This email marketing is my passion in life. This is what I love to do. I love to talk about it. And, it doesn't always have to be like you're looking for a project. If you have a simple question, I'm happy to answer it. Reach out anytime. I'm serious.
Well, on that note, do you think we can sneak one more question in?
Certainly.
All right. This one comes from Liz Roman. If I'm sending from multiple sources and systems, does that increase the chance of spam complaints?
I'm going to give you the classic email marketing answer of it depends. Right? So there's a few things that could cause that to increase the chances of spam complaints. For example, Liz, if you're sending from multiple systems and they're not really communicating with each other, so they're not suppressing the person across all those systems, if they mark you with spam complaint in one system and you continue mailing them from another, they're a lot more likely to mark you there too. The other thing might be that if you're sending from multiple systems, you probably want to take a look and think about frequency, right? Frequency isn't just the campaigns we send from our main ESP. It's all the emails that person received. Just like your brand is an amalgam of all the impressions that a person gets, whether it's a good experience at the store, a billboard, an email, social, whatever it is, right? All those things go together to make what they view as your brand. And the same thing goes for your email, right? All the sources of email, they don't distinguish between different systems. So that in that way, it can increase it. But if you are doing a good job, if you are cleaning them, then they're probably not, especially when using a recognizable from name across them. That would be the other thing I would worry about. If these systems say that they're from like different people and it's not clear that they're all really you, or one of them seems like an unusual name that people might think is fishy or spammy, then that one could be marked. So clear suppression across all systems. Think about frequency capping across all systems, recognizable from name across all systems. If you do those three things, you shouldn't have a problem with increasing the chances of spam complaints. In fact, if anything, they should go down.
Thank you, Liz, for that question.
Yeah, that was a good question.
Absolutely. So we hope you had a good time. I certainly enjoyed it. It felt like a mixture between a classroom and like chatting around a campfire. We are going to continue this series. We hope you join us next time. Register. You've got a QR code there. Our next episode is going to be on November 13th. We hope you're here for the live event. Thank you for joining us on episode 1. Inbox Answers is a 7-part series. As we said, it's going to be a monthly drop-in for deliverability insights with the Dean of Deliverability himself, Luke Glassner. Next up, episode 2, DMARC Decoded, how to read and fix your DMARC record. That's something that a lot of people overlook. So there's going to be some great information to come, and we hope we see you then.
One comment on that. If your DMARC record says that you're running at reject and you send the reports to yourself or don't have an RUA address, come to this session to find out why you should.
And we will see you then. Luke, thank you so much. I've had a great time.
Thank you. And thanks everybody that attending today.
Thank you all. You will have a wonderful day.